The man you're about to marry has been unconscious for 2 years, my uncle whispered as the iron gates of Moretti Estate opened through the rain. So whatever happens inside that house tonight, don't expect him to save you. The tires of the black Rolls-Royce rolled slowly over wet gravel as I stared out the tinted window at the mansion rising from the cliffs above the Atlantic like a cathedral built for ghosts. Lightning flashed behind the towering structure, illuminating black marble columns, enormous stained glass windows, and rows of armed guards standing perfectly still beneath the storm. Everything about the estate felt wrong. Too quiet, too cold, like the entire property was holding its breath. My fingers tightened around the folded contract resting on my lap. Elias Carter, 22 years old. Omega. Debt transferred in exchange for marriage to Lucien Moretti, acting head of the Moretti Syndicate. The words still didn't feel real. 3 weeks ago, I had been working double shifts at a small pharmacy in Brooklyn, trying to keep my mother's medical bills from swallowing us alive. Then the collectors came. Then the threats started. Then my uncle sold me to the most feared Mafia family on the East Coast like I was some final payment nobody wanted to make. "We're here," the driver muttered. My stomach twisted as the car door opened. Rain hammered against the stone driveway, while freezing ocean wind tore through my thin wool coat. 2 towering beta guards escorted me toward the entrance without speaking. Their polished shoes echoed against the massive staircase leading up to the mansion doors. I could smell cedarwood smoke drifting from inside, mixed with something sharper underneath. Antiseptic. Medicine. Death. The doors opened before we reached them. Warm golden light spilled across the rain-soaked marble floor, but it didn't make the mansion feel welcoming. If anything, the warmth only made the shadows deeper. Men in black suits lined the entrance hall like statues. Some glanced at me with pity, others with curiosity. One older alpha standing near the staircase looked openly disgusted. "That's the Omega?" he asked quietly. "He looks fragile." "That's the point," another answered. "The Don's line ends tonight anyway." My chest tightened. I kept my head down as a silver-haired woman approached me across the hall. She wore a dark emerald dress and enough diamonds to blind someone under the chandelier light. Her perfume smelled like roses left too long in winter air. "Elias Carter," she said smoothly. "I'm Viviana Moretti, Lucien's aunt." Her pale eyes swept over me slowly, measuring every weakness. "You should feel honored. Thousands would kill for this marriage." I almost laughed at that. Instead, I swallowed hard and nodded once. Viviana stepped closer, lowering her voice. "There are rules inside this estate. You will not enter restricted rooms. You will not speak to the press. And above all," her expression sharpened, "you will never forget why you were brought here." Another flash of lightning illuminated the grand staircase behind her. "Your job," she continued softly, "is to sit beside Lucien until nature finishes what the coma started. When the Moretti bloodline ends, this marriage ends with it." My pulse pounded painfully against my ribs. They really believed he was already dead. Not physically, but spiritually. Like the man upstairs had already become a corpse everyone was waiting to bury. "The ceremony is ready," one of the guards announced. Viviana gestured for me to follow. The deeper we walked into the mansion, the quieter everything became. The walls were lined with dark paintings of stern-faced men wearing expensive suits and colder expressions. Old Moretti leaders. Every portrait seemed to watch me pass beneath crystal chandeliers that flickered against the storm outside. Then we reached the doors. Massive black doors carved with silver roses. 2 guards opened them simultaneously. And suddenly the world smelled like hospitals and candle smoke. The room beyond was enormous, lit only by dim lamps and dozens of flickering candles surrounding a raised medical platform in the center. My breath caught instantly. Lucien Moretti lay motionless beneath white sheets, surrounded by silent machines glowing blue in the darkness. Clear tubes disappeared beneath the collar of his black silk shirt. A heart monitor pulsed steadily beside him, each electronic beep echoing through the room like a countdown clock. He didn't look real. He looked carved from marble. Pale skin, sharp cheekbones, thick black hair falling slightly over closed eyes. Even unconscious, he carried the terrifying stillness of someone dangerous. The kind of man who could silence an entire room just by entering it. I stopped walking without realizing it. Because somehow, even from several feet away, I could feel him. Not emotionally. Physically. like the air around his body carried pressure strong enough to bend the room itself. "Stand beside your husband," Viviana ordered quietly. My legs barely listened as I approached the platform. The closer I got, the colder the room became. I could hear the storm crashing against the windows high above us. Hear my own heartbeat. Hear the machines breathing for the man lying in front of me. A priest began speaking somewhere behind us, but the words blurred together. All I could focus on was Lucien's hand resting near the edge of the bed. Large, pale, completely still. "Place the ring on his finger," Viviana instructed. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for him. The second my skin touched Lucien Moretti's hand, every monitor in the room screamed. Every light in the room flashed crimson at once. The heart monitor beside Lucien exploded into rapid alarms so loud they echoed off the cathedral ceilings. Men in black suits jerked upright in shock while doctors rushed toward the bed, their polished shoes striking the marble floor in panicked rhythm. I stumbled backward instinctively, my pulse hammering so hard it hurt. "What happened?" someone shouted behind me. His heart rate just spiked. One of the doctors leaned over the monitor, visibly pale beneath the sterile overhead lights. "That is impossible," he whispered. Viviana stepped forward sharply, diamonds trembling against her throat. "Stabilize him immediately." But nobody moved fast enough because the strangest part was not the alarms. It was Lucien's hand. His fingers had tightened around mine. Not fully, not consciously, but enough for everyone in the room to freeze. The air itself seemed to stop breathing. I stared down at his pale hand wrapped loosely around my wrist while cold rushed through my entire body. He was supposed to be unconscious, completely unresponsive. Yet I could feel the faint pressure of his fingertips against my skin like the ghost of a touch. "Remove the Omega," an older alpha snapped suddenly. "Now." Two guards stepped toward me immediately, but the second one grabbed my shoulder. The monitors screamed louder. Lucien's pulse climbed even higher. 80, 90, 100. The room erupted into overlapping voices. "Do not touch him." "What is happening?" "The Don has not reacted in months." "Check his oxygen levels." "Move the Omega closer." The command silenced everyone. Slowly, every eye in the room turned toward the elderly doctor standing beside the machines. He swallowed hard before speaking carefully. "Every major response is happening when the Omega is near physical contact." Viviana's cold expression sharpened instantly. "Explain." The doctor adjusted his glasses nervously. "Alpha patients in prolonged coma states occasionally respond to familiar pheromone frequencies. Rarely. But this," he looked toward me like he was staring at something unnatural. "This level of neurological stimulation is unlike anything I have ever seen." My throat tightened painfully. "I did not do anything." "No," the doctor murmured. "That may be exactly the problem." The storm outside intensified, rain crashing violently against the massive windows while another wave of alarms pulsed through the room. Lucien's fingers twitched again. This time everyone saw it. A low murmur spread among the gathered men. Fear. Real fear. Because men like Lucien Moretti were not supposed to wake up weaker. They woke up dangerous. Viviana stepped toward me slowly, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown clock. "Take his hand again." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to run from this room, from this mansion, from the terrifying stillness surrounding the man lying in front of me. But the guards had already closed behind me. There was nowhere left to go. Slowly, I reached for Lucien's hand once more. The second our skin touched, the monitors stabilized. The screaming. Alarms softened into steady electronic beeps. Oxygen levels normalized. Heart rate slowed. The entire room fell silent except for the storm outside. One of the younger doctors actually crossed himself under his breath. Viviana stared at me for a very long time before speaking. Interesting. The ceremony never finished after that. Nobody even remembered the priest still standing near the candles. Suddenly the marriage contract no longer mattered. I mattered. And somehow, that felt much worse. 2 hours later, I sat alone in a massive bedroom overlooking the cliffs while rain streaked down the tall windows beside me. The room was bigger than my old apartment. Black marble fireplace, dark velvet furniture, massive bed untouched beneath silver sheets. Yet despite the luxury, the entire place felt cold enough to preserve ghosts. I could still feel Lucien's fingers around my wrist. A quiet knock interrupted my thoughts. Before I answered, the door opened. A young beta woman entered carrying a tray of untouched food. "My name is Clara," she said softly. "I have been assigned to assist you." Assigned. Not hired. Assigned. Like I was already part of the estate inventory. "Thank you," I answered quietly. Clara avoided my eyes as she placed the tray near the fireplace. "You should eat while it is warm." "What exactly happened downstairs?" I asked carefully. Her hands paused briefly. "Nobody knows. But they are acting like I changed something." Clara finally looked at me then, and for the first time since arriving at the mansion, I saw genuine fear in someone's eyes. "Mr. Moretti has not reacted to another person in almost 2 years," she whispered. "Not his doctors. Not his family. Not anyone." Lightning flashed beyond the windows, illuminating the ocean below like shattered silver glass. "Then why me?" Clara hesitated too long. That alone terrified me. "There are rumors," she admitted finally, "about powerful alphas, about bonds that happen outside normal biology." I swallowed hard. That sounds insane. This house was built by insane men. Silence settled heavily between us. Then, somewhere deep below the mansion, a low mechanical alarm echoed faintly through the halls. Clara's face lost all color instantly. Another alarm answered it farther away. Then another. The entire estate suddenly seemed to wake around us. Footsteps thundered through distant corridors. Voices overlapped downstairs. Doors slammed open. Clara turned toward the hallway in visible panic. "Stay in your room," she whispered urgently. "Lock the door." "Why?" She looked toward me like she did not want to answer. "Because the Don's brain activity just came back online." The hallway outside my room sounded like a hospital during a hurricane. Footsteps thundered across marble floors while overlapping voices echoed through the estate in sharp bursts of panic and disbelief. I stood frozen beside the fireplace, staring at the locked bedroom door as another distant alarm pulsed through the mansion walls. Somewhere below me, machines were screaming again. Clara grabbed my wrist before I could move. "Do not leave this room," she whispered urgently. "Nobody is supposed to know where you are tonight." "Why would they care where I am?" I asked. Her face tightened. "Because if Lucien Moretti wakes up—" She hesitated, like even finishing the sentence felt dangerous. "Everything in this house changes." Before I could respond, a voice barked sharply somewhere down the corridor. Heavy footsteps approached fast. Clara immediately stepped away from me, smoothing her uniform as the bedroom door swung open without warning. 3 men entered. The first was Viviana. The second was an older doctor carrying a silver tablet covered in medical readings. The third man made the entire room feel smaller. The second, he crossed the doorway. Tall, broad shoulders, black suit perfectly tailored despite the late hour. Dark hair streaked slightly with silver near the temples. His cold gray eyes settled on me with the stillness of a loaded weapon. "This is him," he asked quietly. Viviana nodded once. "Elias Carter." The man kept staring at me without blinking. Every alpha instinct in the room pressed down like invisible gravity. I suddenly understood why people inside this mansion barely breathed when powerful men spoke. "I am Dominic Moretti," he said calmly. "Lucien's uncle." His voice was smooth, controlled. Somehow that made him more intimidating. Dominic stepped closer slowly, studying me the way wealthy people inspect fragile antiques before deciding whether they are useful. "You are smaller than I expected," he murmured. I swallowed hard. I did not realize there were size requirements. For the first time, something flickered briefly in his expression. Not warmth. Amusement. Viviana looked irritated by it immediately. "The doctors confirmed the neurological response," she said coldly. "Every spike in brain activity happened during contact." Dominic glanced toward the doctor beside him. "And now?" The doctor cleared his throat nervously. "The Don's neural pathways are stabilizing for the first time since the accident." Accident. The word lingered strangely in the air. Nobody elaborated. Dominic walked toward the fireplace, adjusting the cuff of one black glove with precise movements. "You understand the position you are now in, Elias?" "Not really," I admitted honestly. "Good," he answered softly. "That means you are still thinking clearly." Viviana crossed her arms. "The simplest solution is to keep him near Lucien until recovery is complete." The way she said it made my stomach twist. Not like a person, like medication. Dominic remained silent for several seconds before finally turning back toward me. "From this moment forward, you will remain inside the estate under full protection." "Protection from what?" I asked quietly. Neither of them answered immediately. The silence told me enough. This family was dangerous even to itself. Dominic finally approached me again, his gaze unreadable. There are men in this city who would burn entire neighborhoods to control Lucien Moretti. If word spreads that you can influence his condition, he stopped there intentionally. He did not need to finish. I already understood. I looked toward the rain-covered windows, pulse unsteady beneath my ribs. I want to go home. Viviana almost laughed. You do not have a home anymore. The cruelty in her voice landed with surgical precision because she knew it was true. My debts had been erased through the marriage contract. My apartment lease was gone. My family had already taken the money. Everything behind me had been cut loose the second I entered these gates. Dominic studied my expression carefully before speaking again. Fear is normal, he said quietly. But fear keeps people alive in this house. Then suddenly another alarm echoed through the mansion. Louder this time. The doctor's tablet lit up instantly. His eyes widened. His stress levels are rising again. Viviana looked directly at me. Go downstairs. What? Now? My chest tightened painfully. You expect me to just walk back into that room? You are his husband, she replied coldly. Act like it. 20 minutes later, I stood once again outside the massive black doors leading into Lucien's medical suite. Only this time the hallway was lined with twice as many guards. Nobody spoke as I approached. Some looked nervous. Others looked terrified. One young beta nurse actually stepped aside the second she saw me coming. Like proximity alone carried danger now. The doors opened slowly. Candlelight flickered across black marble floors while rain hammered the tall cathedral windows beyond the bed. The machines surrounding Lucien glowed softly in the darkness. But something felt different now. He no longer looked lifeless. He looked sleeping, waiting. The doctors quietly exited the room as I entered, leaving me alone beside the raised platform. The silence that followed felt enormous. I moved closer carefully, my heartbeat loud in my own ears. Lucien lay exactly where I had left him. Pale skin, dark hair, black silk shirt partially open near the collarbone where medical wires disappeared beneath the fabric. Yet now I could see the faintest tension beneath his jaw, like some hidden part of him was fighting upward through the coma. Outside, thunder rolled across the ocean cliffs. I stared at him for several long seconds before finally sitting beside the bed. I do not know what is happening either, I whispered quietly into the dim room. Everybody here acts like you are some kind of storm waiting to hit the city. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside him. I let out a shaky breath. Honestly, I think they scare me more than you do. Silence. Rain. Candlelight. Trembling against marble walls. Then slowly, carefully, I reached for his hand again. The second our skin touched, Lucien Moretti opened his eyes. The first thing I noticed was his eyes. Silver. Not soft silver like moonlight or winter snow, but cold silver. The kind that belonged in the barrel of a gun or the edge of a knife. They locked onto mine instantly with terrifying clarity, and suddenly every story I had overheard about Lucien Moretti no longer felt exaggerated. Even half-conscious, the man looked dangerous enough to stop a room from breathing. I froze beside the bed, unable to move. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor echoed loudly through the dark medical suite while rain battered the cathedral windows behind us. Lucien did not blink. He just stared at me with a strange stillness that made the air feel heavier around the bed. Then his fingers tightened around mine again. Stronger this time. Deliberate. My pulse stumbled painfully. You are awake, I whispered before I could stop myself. His expression barely changed, but something flickered deep behind his eyes. Confusion. Exhaustion. Hunger. Not physical hunger. Something older. The kind of emptiness that came from being trapped too long inside silence. Lucien's gaze slowly drifted across the room, taking in the monitors, the machines, the candlelight trembling against black marble walls. His breathing remained calm, but tension gathered visibly along his jaw. He understood immediately. He had lost time. A lot of it. The door burst open before either of us spoke again. Doctors flooded into the room alongside armed guards and nervous staff members. Voices overlapped instantly. His pupils are responsive. Blood pressure stabilizing. Call Dominic immediately. Keep everyone back. But Lucien never looked away from me. Even as the room filled with movement, His silver eyes remained fixed on mine like I was the only stable thing in the entire space. One of the doctors stepped carefully toward the bed. "Mr. Moretti," he said gently, "can you hear me?" Lucien's gaze shifted slowly toward him. The room went silent. Because even after 2 years unconscious, Lucien Moretti still carried authority like gravity itself. The doctor swallowed visibly before continuing. "You were injured during an attack approximately 23 months ago. You have been in a coma since then." Lucien stared at him for several long seconds. Then finally, his voice emerged. Rough, deep, quiet enough that everyone leaned closer to hear it. "Who touched my omega?" The entire room froze. My breath caught instantly. The doctor blinked in confusion while several guards exchanged nervous glances. Lucien's eyes returned to me again, sharper this time, possessive in a way that made heat rush nervously through my chest. "Answer me," he said softly. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Dominic Moretti entered the room. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Even the guards straightened instinctively as Lucien's uncle approached the bed with controlled calm. Dominic stopped several feet away, studying Lucien carefully. "Welcome back," he said quietly. Lucien ignored him completely. "Who touched him?" Dominic's gaze flickered briefly toward me before returning to Lucien. "The Omega is unharmed." Something dangerous settled behind Lucien's eyes at that answer. Not anger exactly. Calculation. Like a predator slowly waking after a long winter. He looked back toward me once more, and suddenly I realized he still had not released my hand. In fact, his grip had tightened enough that I could feel warmth radiating through my wrist. "Your name?" he said quietly. "Elias," I answered automatically. The way he repeated it sent a strange chill through me. "Elias." His voice wrapped around the name slowly, thoughtfully, like he was memorizing it. Then exhaustion finally hit him. I saw it happen in real time. The slight tension leaving his shoulders. The heavy drag of his breathing. 2 years of sleep had clearly devastated his body, no matter how terrifying his presence remained. One of the doctors stepped closer again. "You need rest, Mr. Moretti." Lucien's expression turned colder instantly. "Leave." Nobody argued. Not even the doctors. Within seconds the room emptied until only Dominic, Viviana, and I remained beside the bed. Rain continued crashing against the mansion while the machines beeped softly around us. Dominic studied Lucien carefully before speaking. "Do you remember the attack?" Lucien remained silent for several moments. Then slowly, he nodded once. "The wine," he murmured. Viviana stiffened immediately. "You believe you were poisoned?" Lucien's eyes darkened slightly. "I know I was." The room turned colder after that sentence. Dominic's expression never changed, but I noticed the way his gloved fingers tightened subtly near his side. Viviana looked genuinely shaken for the first time since I arrived at the estate. "Who did it?" she asked carefully. Lucien finally looked away from me completely and toward the storm outside the windows. "Someone inside this house." Silence swallowed the room whole, because everyone understood what that meant. If Lucien Moretti had been poisoned by his own family, then nobody inside the mansion was truly safe. Not even me. Especially not me. Lucien slowly turned his head toward Dominic again. "How long has Elias been here?" Dominic answered calmly. "Less than 12 hours. Lucien's silver gaze drifted back toward me once more. There was something unnerving in the way he watched me now. Not suspicion. Recognition. Like some hidden instinct deep inside him had already decided I belonged near him before his mind fully caught up. "He stays with me," Lucien said quietly. Viviana frowned immediately. "Lucien, your condition is unstable. You need medical supervision." I said. He repeated softly, "He stays with me." The room fell silent again because nobody knew how to refuse him. Even exhausted and barely conscious, Lucien Moretti still sounded like a man the world obeyed automatically. Dominic studied him for several long seconds before finally nodding once. "Very well." Viviana looked furious but said nothing. As the others prepared to leave, Lucien's hand tightened around mine one final time. Then, without breaking eye contact, he whispered the words that made my entire body go cold. "Do not let them separate us." By sunrise, the entire mansion had transformed into something tense and watchful, like a city preparing for an approaching storm. Men in dark suits filled every hallway. Guards doubled near every entrance. Conversation stopped the second I walked past. Nobody openly explained what was happening, but I could feel it in the air now. Lucien Moretti was awake, and that terrified everyone more than his coma ever had. I stood near the massive windows inside Lucien's private sitting room, watching gray Atlantic waves crash violently against the cliffs below. The storm had finally weakened overnight, leaving behind fog so thick it swallowed the horizon whole. Somewhere deeper in the estate, phones rang endlessly. Orders, meetings, damage control. The Empire was waking with its king. You have not eaten. The voice behind me was low and rough with exhaustion. I turned instantly. Lucien stood near the doorway wearing black slacks and a dark cashmere shirt, one hand resting lightly against the marble wall for balance. Seeing him upright for the first time sent a strange chill through me. He was taller than I realized, easily 6'4", broad shoulders, sharp features carved with the kind of cold beauty magazines tried and failed to imitate. But it was not his appearance that unsettled me. It was the silence surrounding him. Lucien did not need to raise his voice or dominate a room physically. His presence alone altered the atmosphere around him, like gravity shifting. You should not be walking yet, I said carefully. Lucien ignored that completely. His silver eyes drifted toward the untouched breakfast tray beside the fireplace. Eat. The single word landed like a command dressed as concern. I hesitated before crossing the room slowly. Every movement near him made me hyper-aware of the distance between us. The difference in power. The danger. Yet somehow, beneath all of it, there was something else now too. Curiosity. Lucien lowered himself carefully into the chair near the fire, his expression tightening slightly from lingering weakness. 2 years unconscious clearly still haunted his body despite the terrifying control in his eyes. The doctors said your recovery could take months, I said quietly while sitting across from him. Doctors are usually wrong. That sounds arrogant. It is. To my surprise, the corner of his mouth shifted slightly afterward. Not quite a smile, more like the memory of one. Silence settled between us again, broken only by distant thunder rolling over the ocean. Lucien studied me openly now, like he was piecing together something invisible. You are frightened of me, he said eventually. It was not a question. I stared down at the untouched cup of coffee warming my hands. Everyone in this house is frightened of you. That was not my observation. My pulse stumbled awkwardly. The way he watched people felt invasive. Precise. Like he noticed things others missed automatically. You were unconscious for 2 years, I answered carefully. Then you woke up asking who touched me. Forgive me if that feels slightly alarming. This time I definitely saw it. A small flicker of amusement in his silver eyes. Gone almost immediately. Lucien leaned back slowly, the firelight casting shifting shadows across his sharp features. Did anyone hurt you here? The question caught me completely off guard. What? Since arriving at the estate. His voice remained calm, but something colder moved underneath it now. Protective. Possessive. Dangerous. I shook my head carefully. No, Lucien held my gaze several seconds longer, like verifying the answer himself. Finally, the tension beneath his jaw eased slightly. Good. I looked away first, because something about the relief in his expression unsettled me more than anger would have. Before either of us spoke again, the sitting room doors opened abruptly. Dominic entered alongside 2 older men dressed in expensive charcoal suits. The atmosphere instantly sharpened. Business. Power. Lucien's entire demeanor changed subtly the second his uncle walked in. The softness left his face completely. The Eastern accounts have been frozen, one of the men explained immediately. Several partners assumed leadership would transition permanently after the coma. Lucien's expression never shifted. Names. The man handed over a tablet silently. Lucien scanned it without visible reaction. Remove them from future negotiations. The quietness in his voice somehow made the order more intimidating. Dominic remained standing near the doorway, watching Lucien carefully. There is another issue, he said. Lucien looked up slowly. Dominic's eyes flickered briefly toward me before returning to his nephew. News of your recovery is spreading faster than expected. Lucien's silver gaze sharpened instantly. How? Someone inside the estate leaked it. Silence swallowed the room whole. One of the businessmen visibly stiffened beside Dominic. Lucien placed the tablet down slowly on the armrest beside him. Interesting, he murmured. The fire cracked softly between us while tension spread through the room like smoke. Then Lucien looked directly at me again. Leave us. The businessman obeyed immediately. Dominic lingered several seconds longer before finally following them out. The heavy doors shut behind him with a deep metallic sound. Suddenly the room felt much smaller, much quieter. Lucien remained silent for a long moment after that, staring into the fireplace. You should stay away from the West Wing, he said eventually. Why? Because the person who poisoned me is still inside this house. Cold rushed through my chest instantly. Lucien looked toward me again, silver eyes unreadable beneath the dim firelight. And now they know you woke me up. Before I could respond, someone screamed downstairs. The scream echoed through the mansion so suddenly that every muscle in my body locked in place. It came from somewhere below the main staircase. Sharp, terrified. Then silence followed so fast it felt unnatural. Lucien stood immediately. The movement was smooth despite his weakened condition, but I still noticed the slight tension that crossed his face from standing too quickly after 2 years confined to a bed. It did not matter. The atmosphere around him changed instantly. The warmth near the fireplace vanished beneath something colder. More dangerous. Stay here, he ordered quietly. I almost answered automatically before catching myself. You cannot seriously expect me to sit alone while someone downstairs is screaming. Lucien looked toward me then, silver eyes unreadable beneath the dim morning light. Yes, he said calmly. That is exactly what I expect. The doors opened before I could argue further. Dominic entered first, followed by 2 armed guards. The older alpha's expression remained controlled, but something urgent moved beneath the surface now. One of the staff members collapsed near the west corridor, he said. Lucien's jaw tightened slightly. Dead. Dominic paused just long enough for the silence to become an answer. Cold spread through my chest. Lucien walked toward the doorway immediately. Dominic blocked him with a subtle movement. You should not be seen downstairs yet. Half the estate still believes you are bedridden. And the other half? Lucien asked quietly. Dominic's gray eyes darkened. The other half is already choosing sides. The words settled heavily in the room. Lucien stared at his uncle several seconds before finally speaking again. Who found the body? A kitchen attendant. And the victim? Dominic hesitated. One of your night nurses. Something shifted instantly in Lucien's expression. Not shock. Recognition. Like another invisible piece of a larger puzzle had just locked into place. Clear the West Wing, he said softly. No one enters without my permission. Dominic nodded once before leaving with the guards. The heavy doors shut again behind them, but this time the silence afterward felt sharper. More dangerous. I looked toward Lucien carefully. You think the nurse knew something? Lucien moved slowly toward the rain-covered windows overlooking the cliffs. Fog still swallowed most of the ocean below, turning the horizon into a blur of silver and gray. She changed my medication schedule 3 days before the coma stabilized. You remember that? I remember everything. His answer sent chills across my arms. Lucien rested one hand lightly against the window frame, gaze distant now. People assume unconsciousness feels like sleep. His voice remained calm, but something heavy moved beneath it. It does not. I heard conversations. Footsteps. Arguments. Machines. He looked down slightly. Fear. The room felt colder after that confession. I stared at him carefully, trying to imagine being trapped inside silence for 2 entire years while hearing the world continue without you. Why did nobody investigate the poisoning before now? I asked quietly. Lucien's expression darkened faintly in the reflection of the storm outside. Because if I died naturally, succession remains simple. And if you were murdered, then every alliance inside the organization becomes unstable. I swallowed hard. This family truly was not normal. Even near death, Lucien had apparently been more politically useful unconscious than openly targeted. Suddenly, I understood why Dominic seemed cautious around everyone. Why guards lined every hallway. Why the mansion felt less like a home and more like a kingdom balancing on cracked ice. You still have not asked why I reacted to you, Lucien said suddenly. The shift in conversation caught me off guard. Honestly, I have been trying not to think about it. A faint shadow of amusement crossed his face again. Brief. Almost invisible. Wise choice. I crossed my arms uneasily. That is not reassuring. Lucien turned fully toward me then, silver eyes holding mine with unsettling intensity. Certain alpha bloodlines develop heightened instinctual bonds. You are talking about mate bonds? No, his voice lowered slightly. Something older. The air suddenly felt too small inside the room. Lucien studied me carefully before continuing. My family line carries abnormal pheromone sensitivity. Rare. Dangerous. Unpredictable. I frowned slightly. What does that have to do with me? Silence stretched several seconds too long. I do not know yet, he admitted finally. That answer somehow scared me more than certainty would have. Before either of us spoke again, a soft knock interrupted the room. Clara entered carrying a tray of tea with trembling hands. The second she noticed Lucien standing near the windows, her face lost all color. She immediately lowered her gaze. Mr. Moretti. Lucien watched her quietly. You are afraid. Clara nearly dropped the tray. No, sir. Lying in this house is dangerous. The calmness in his voice only made the tension worse. I stepped forward quickly before Clara completely panicked. She is just overwhelmed, I said carefully. Lucien's silver eyes shifted toward me. The atmosphere changed instantly. Softer. Not warm exactly, but calmer. Clara clearly noticed it too, because her shoulders relaxed slightly for the first time since entering the room. Lucien observed the interaction silently. Then slowly, thoughtfully, he walked toward me instead of the tea tray. The closer he got, the more overwhelming his presence became. Cedarwood. Smoke. Cold winter air. His scent wrapped heavily through the room despite the suppressants woven into the estate ventilation system. Lucien stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could see faint exhaustion beneath his eyes for the first time. Interesting, he murmured quietly. What is? I asked. His gaze lingered on me several seconds longer before answering. You calm me. The honesty in his voice hit harder than if he had whispered something dangerous, because nothing about Lucien Moretti seemed built for calmness. Then suddenly, every light in the room went out. Darkness swallowed the room so completely that for one disorienting second, nobody moved. The ocean wind howled outside the mansion windows while somewhere deep below us, backup generators failed to activate. Then emergency alarms erupted through the estate. Red security lights flickered dimly across the ceiling before dying again almost instantly. Clara gasped softly beside the tea tray. The generators never fail, she whispered. Lucien's expression changed immediately. Every trace of calm disappeared beneath something sharp and calculating. This was deliberate. His voice cut through the darkness with terrifying steadiness. I could barely make out the outline of his tall frame near the windows, but somehow that made his presence feel even larger, more dangerous. Somewhere downstairs, hurried footsteps thundered through the hallways. Doors slammed open. Voices shouted overlapping orders through the mansion. Lucien moved toward me silently through the darkness. Before I could react, his hand closed firmly around my wrist. Warm, steady, protective. Stay close, he said quietly. The words should not have calmed me as much as they did. Another flicker of red emergency light illuminated the room briefly, casting sharp shadows across Lucien's face. His silver eyes looked almost metallic in the darkness. Cold, focused, predatory. Clara stepped backward nervously toward the door. I should check the lower staff halls. No, Lucien's command stopped her instantly. Nobody moves alone right now. A heavy metallic sound echoed somewhere deeper inside the mansion. Not loud, but deliberate, like a door slowly locking into place. Lucien's grip tightened slightly around my wrist. Someone is inside the private floors. My pulse spiked instantly. You mean besides us? Lucien did not answer immediately. He listened, completely still. Then I noticed it too. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Somewhere beyond the sitting room doors. Clara looked seconds away from panic. The guards would never allow unauthorized access upstairs. Lucien's expression darkened faintly. The guards answer to whoever controls the security system. The implication settled heavily between us. Whoever poisoned him might already control part of the estate from inside. Another red flash lit the room briefly. This time I noticed something near the doorway that made my stomach tighten. The sitting room doors were slightly open. I was certain they had been closed moments earlier. Lucien saw it too. Every muscle in his body went still. Behind me, he said softly. I obeyed instantly without even thinking. The air around him felt different now. Sharper. Like standing beside a storm seconds before lightning strikes. Lucien moved toward the doors with slow, controlled steps, while Clara remained frozen near the fireplace. Another distant crash echoed downstairs, followed by overlapping voices somewhere in the east wing. The mansion no longer sounded organized. It sounded afraid. Lucien reached the doorway and stopped. Silence. Then suddenly, a voice spoke from the dark hallway beyond. You recovered faster than expected. My entire body locked instantly. The voice was male. Calm. Familiar somehow. Lucien's expression turned unreadable. Step into the light. For several long seconds, nothing moved. Then a figure emerged slowly beneath the faint emergency glow. Tall. Dark suit. Silver tie. Black gloves. Dominic Moretti. Clara let out a shaky breath of relief immediately, but Lucien remained completely still. The backup systems are compromised, Dominic said calmly while stepping into the room. Security cameras went offline approximately 3 minutes ago. Lucien never released my wrist. And yet you found us quickly. Dominic's gray eyes flickered briefly toward me before returning to his nephew. I know this house better than anyone. The tension between them felt strange suddenly. Controlled. Careful. Like both men were measuring every word beneath the surface. Lucien studied his uncle several seconds before finally speaking again. Who ordered the West Wing cleared? Dominic's expression did not change. I did. Interesting timing. Clara looked nervously between them while thunder rolled across the cliffs outside. I suddenly realized something terrifying. Lucien did not fully trust Dominic either. Nobody inside this mansion trusted anyone completely. Another alarm burst through the estate, louder this time. Dominic glanced toward the hallway sharply. Someone accessed the lower archives. Lucien's silver eyes narrowed instantly. The medical records. Dominic nodded once. Including your toxicology reports. Cold spread through my chest. Whoever sabotaged the power system was trying to erase evidence. Lucien released my wrist, then finally stepped fully into the room's dim red glow. The shadows somehow made him look even more intimidating. Like the darkness belonged to him naturally. Seal the estate, he said quietly. No one leaves. Dominic hesitated slightly. If we lock down the property publicly, the other families will know something is wrong. Lucien's expression remained perfectly calm. Something is wrong. The room fell silent after that. Because nobody could argue with the truth of it anymore. Lucien looked toward me again then. The intensity in his silver eyes softened just slightly. You stay with me tonight. Clara blinked in visible surprise. Dominic's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Lucien, he said carefully, that may not be wise until we know who is targeting the estate. That is exactly why he stays with me. His answer came instantly. Absolute. Final. Dominic studied him for several long seconds before finally nodding once. Very well. Then, the emergency lights flickered again. This time they stayed on. Dim red illumination spread across the sitting room while the generators slowly rumbled back to life somewhere beneath the mansion. But before anyone relaxed, Lucien suddenly turned toward the hallway again. His entire posture sharpened. Someone was here, he said softly. I frowned. What? Lucien stepped toward the partially open doorway and crouched slightly near the marble floor. Then he picked up something small resting near the threshold. A silver syringe. The syringe glinted beneath the dim red emergency lights like a secret someone had dropped in a hurry. Lucien held it carefully between 2 fingers while silence spread through the sitting room. Dominic's expression darkened immediately the second he recognized it. That belongs to the medical wing, he said quietly. Lucien turned the syringe slowly beneath the light, studying the clear liquid still trapped inside the chamber. No, he answered calmly. It belonged to the medical wing. The difference in wording made cold ripple through my chest. Clara stood frozen near the fireplace, visibly pale. Someone came here during the blackout, she whispered. Lucien's silver eyes lifted slowly toward the hallway beyond the doors. Yes. Dominic extended his hand slightly. Let me see it. For one brief moment, Lucien did not move. The tension between uncle and nephew sharpened almost invisibly before Lucien finally handed over the syringe. Dominic inspected it carefully beneath the emergency lights, his jaw tightening faintly. Sedative, he murmured. Strong enough to stop pheromone surges. Lucien's expression never changed. Or restart a coma. Silence swallowed the room instantly. Even Clara stopped breathing for a second. My stomach twisted painfully as realization settled over all of us at once. Someone had entered the sitting room during the blackout carrying enough sedative to incapacitate Lucien again. Maybe permanently. Dominic slipped the syringe into his coat pocket carefully. I will have the compound traced. Lucien looked toward him sharply. Personally. Dominic nodded once. Then his gaze shifted briefly toward me. The Omega should be relocated to the North residence until the estate stabilizes. No, Lucien's answer came instantly. Cold. Absolute. Dominic exhaled slowly through his nose. Lucien, listen carefully. Whoever targeted you understands the connection between you and Elias now. Keeping him exposed inside the main estate increases the risk to both of you. Lucien stepped closer. The room itself seemed to tighten around him, and moving him where I cannot reach him increases it more. Neither man raised his voice. They did not need to. The tension between them carried enough weight already. Dominic studied his nephew for several long seconds before finally nodding once. Very well. Then he turned toward me directly for the first time that evening. Stay away from unfamiliar staff members. Do not eat or drink anything unless it comes through Lucien's private kitchen. And if security alarms trigger again, his gray eyes sharpened slightly. Run toward guards wearing silver pins only. Why silver pins? I asked quietly. Dominic's expression remained unreadable. Because not every guard inside this estate works for Lucien anymore. Then he left without another word. The heavy doors shut behind him with a low metallic sound. Clara quickly followed after receiving a quiet dismissal from Lucien, leaving the two of us alone once again inside the dimly lit sitting room. Rain continued crashing against the cliffs beyond the windows while emergency power hummed softly through the walls. I stared toward the closed doors uneasily. How many people inside this mansion actually want you alive? Lucien walked slowly back toward the fireplace before answering. Less than yesterday. I let out a nervous breath despite myself. That was not comforting. A faint shadow of amusement flickered across his face again. You prefer comforting lies? I prefer not living inside what feels like a luxury haunted house. Lucien sat carefully near the fire, exhaustion finally beginning to show again beneath the sharp control in his posture. The Moretti family built this estate during Prohibition, he said quietly. Half the tunnels beneath the cliffs were originally smuggling routes. That somehow makes everything worse. This time his mouth almost curved into an actual smile before disappearing again. Silence settled between us afterward, softer than before. Outside, lightning flashed faintly beyond the fog-covered ocean. I watched Lucien carefully from across the room. He looked impossibly composed for someone who had just awakened from 2 years trapped in darkness only to discover his own family empire fracturing around him. Yet beneath the calm exterior, I could see exhaustion pulling at him now. Tiny signs most people would miss. The stiffness near his shoulders. The slower breathing. The way his fingers occasionally tightened against the armrest unconsciously. You should rest, I said quietly. Lucien's silver eyes lifted toward me. You say that often. Because you look like you are forcing your body to function through pure stubbornness. That is essentially accurate. I shook my head softly. You are impossible. And yet you woke me anyway. The room went quiet after that. The fire cracked softly between us while thunder rolled faintly outside. Lucien studied me for several seconds before speaking again. Why did you stay beside my bed? The question caught me off guard. What? Most people inside this house fear me. His voice remained calm. You did too. I still do. Another faint flicker of amusement crossed his expression. Honest. I looked down briefly at my hands. You were alone. Lucien went very still after that answer. Everyone talked about you like you were already dead, I admitted quietly. But every time I touched your hand, the machines reacted. So part of me thought maybe. I hesitated. Maybe you were still trying to come back. Silence stretched heavily between us. Then Lucien stood slowly from the chair. This time the exhaustion hit him harder. I noticed it instantly in the slight imbalance of his posture. Before thinking, I stepped toward him automatically. Lucien's hand caught my wrist gently the second I got close enough. Warm. Steady. His silver eyes locked onto mine beneath the firelight. Elias, he said quietly. Do you know what the final thing I heard before waking up was? My pulse stumbled slightly. No. Lucien's gaze softened in a way I had not seen before. Dangerous men should not look gentle. It felt unnatural. Your voice. Then somewhere deep beneath the mansion, another alarm began to ring. The alarm beneath the mansion did not sound like the others. This one was lower, slower, deliberate enough that even Lucien's expression hardened instantly the second it echoed through the estate. His hand remained around my wrist for one more second before releasing me carefully. "That is the private vault system," he said quietly. "What does that mean?" Lucien's silver eyes darkened faintly beneath the firelight. "It means someone just entered the underground archives." Thunder rolled violently across the cliffs outside as he crossed the room toward the doors. I followed automatically this time. "Wait, you are seriously going downstairs?" "Yes." "Lucien, someone already tried to sedate you tonight." He looked back toward me then. Calm, cold, completely certain. "Which means they are running out of time." The answer sent chills through me. Before either of us moved farther, the sitting room doors opened again. Dominic entered alongside four guards wearing silver pins on their black lapels exactly like he described earlier. The older Alpha immediately looked toward Lucien. The lower security doors were breached from inside the archives corridor. Lucien nodded once. "I know." Dominic's gaze shifted toward me briefly. "Elias stays here." "No," Lucien answered immediately. Dominic's expression sharpened slightly. "The underground levels are not secure. Neither is this floor anymore." Lucien adjusted the cuffs of his black shirt slowly, every movement controlled despite the lingering weakness beneath his posture. Whoever triggered the blackout wanted separation. His silver eyes drifted toward me briefly. "They do not get it." Something about the certainty in his voice made my chest tighten unexpectedly. Not because it sounded possessive, because it sounded protective. 20 minutes later, we descended through the private eastern elevator beneath the mansion. The atmosphere underground felt completely different from the luxurious estate above us. Colder, industrial. Long concrete corridors stretched beneath harsh white security lights, while reinforced steel doors lined the hallways like hidden vaults beneath a bank. Guards moved quickly around us, speaking into radios while tension spread through the underground level like smoke. Lucien walked at the center of everything without hesitation. Even surrounded by armed security and chaos, people instinctively moved around him like planets orbiting gravity. Dominic stayed slightly ahead coordinating guards while I remained beside Lucien. The elevator finally stopped near a massive steel corridor marked Archive Level 4. One security door hung partially open ahead of us. Lucien went still instantly. "Nobody enters first," Dominic warned sharply. But Lucien was already walking forward. The underground corridor smelled faintly like antiseptic and cold metal. I noticed overturned storage boxes scattered across the floor near the open doorway, along with papers hastily abandoned during whatever happened down here earlier. Lucien stepped through the damaged doorway carefully. The archive room beyond looked less like a storage vault and more like a private intelligence center. Rows of locked filing cabinets stretched beneath fluorescent lights, while digital screens flickered across one wall, displaying security footage from throughout the estate. Most of the monitors now showed static. Dominic approached one of the open terminals quickly. Several medical files were deleted remotely approximately 8 minutes ago. Lucien scanned the room silently before his gaze landed on something near the back wall. A single file folder left open on the floor. He walked toward it slowly and picked it up. The color drained from Dominic's face almost immediately when he saw the label. Moretti, Lucien. Toxicology report. Lucien opened the folder carefully beneath the harsh overhead lights. Silence spread through the room while he read the missing sections still left inside the damaged file. Then finally, very softly, he spoke. "It was not poison." Dominic stared at him sharply. "What?" Lucien's silver eyes lifted from the report slowly. "The coma was chemically induced." Cold rushed through my entire body. Dominic grabbed the folder quickly, scanning the pages himself. "That is impossible." "No," Lucien answered quietly. "It was precise." The underground room suddenly felt freezing. Lucien turned another page slowly before continuing. The compound suppressed higher alpha neurological activity while maintaining cardiovascular stability. I frowned slightly. Why would someone do that instead of just, I stopped myself? Lucien looked toward me calmly. Because dead men create investigations. Dominic's jaw tightened visibly while reading the report. This formula required medical access and executive authorization. Lucien's expression darkened faintly. Exactly. Silence settled heavily around us. Whoever orchestrated the coma had not acted impulsively. This was planned carefully by someone with money, access, and intimate knowledge of the estate. Then suddenly, one of the static security monitors flickered back online. A hallway camera feed appeared briefly before glitching again. But during the single clear frame, I saw it. A figure standing outside Lucien's private rooms upstairs. Tall, wearing black gloves, watching the camera directly. Dominic saw it too. Freeze that image. A guard rushed toward the monitor controls, but the screen immediately dissolved back into static. Lucien's expression became terrifyingly still. They are upstairs. Dominic turned instantly toward the guards. Lock every private corridor immediately. Radios exploded with overlapping responses while alarms began pulsing faintly through the underground halls again. But Lucien never looked at the guards. His silver eyes settled directly on me instead. You should not have come down here. My pulse stumbled slightly. You literally told me not to separate from you. I changed my mind. Before I could respond, another security monitor flickered violently.